Hello! Today we're going to be looking at creating this effect where we can create words out of instances of images. So each one of these little particles or instances is a different image. You can use an image or a video, and we can create whatever sort of text animations we want out of this. I have this interesting sort of radial thing happening. We can also go for more of a standard kind of look where, the outline of the word is happening out of these images. We can also do interesting things when we bend and mesh the geometry and, play with the way that the animations are happening. And, we can kind of keep it simple and, explore the different ways that animating the size and position of the instances can create interesting and new types of effects. So let's get into it. This will be a great lesson in how to do instancing in a very kind of simple and straightforward way. I'm surprised that this technique actually had not been covered before, so I'm excited to do a tutorial on it. Alright, so I'm going to go up a level to the darkness. I'm going to stop this from running, and let's go into a new base. So what we want to do is get started with creating the instancing network. So I'm going to grab a rectangle, and we're going to put this into a transform. Going to put this into a null, and this null is going to go into a geometry. You should know the deal if you're watching this by now, and if not, there's a lot of great instancing tutorials out there. Highly recommend, because I'm not going to really go too much into the science behind this, but we're looking at this really basic instancing network right here. And let's throw that onto a transform and a null. Let's set that viewer active. Check it out, looking good. I'm going to go over to the transform, and I want this on a white background. So I'm going to hit on the comp over background color. Take this alpha to 1. I like it on kind of just a little bit off-white, so I'm going to pick this color over here. Looking good. Now I'm going to take this transform scale down quite a bit. You should see a small rectangle. Very nice. And then I'm just going to go to right-click and add annotate. Let's just make a little box. Make sure that we're keeping things clean as we're going along. Looking good. Alright, so let us get our text. So I'm going to come over here, and I'm going to go to SOP, and I'm going to get a text. I'm going to go over to text and write into here. I'm going to write hello. Cool. I'm going to, let's bring it down here actually. I'm going to put this into a transform. And I'm going to put this into a resample. And then I'm going to put this into a sort. And then I'm going to put that into a null. So let's take a look at all the operators I just put down again. I put down a text. Just all I changed was the word. Transform, resample, sort into a null. And on this null, I'm going to want to reference this a bunch. So I'm going to call this a text sub. So I just know what the name is. Then what I'm going to do is, for ease of use when I'm kind of doing my instance animations, I'm going to go from here and put this into a chop. Go chop sop2. I'm going to throw that into a merge so I can add some more good stuff later. I'm going to add a null, and I want to rename this to instance data. You don't really have to do this step. I just like to do it. I feel like it's easier for me to kind of be organized this way. So I'm going to go into instance. I'm going to go instancing on, and then I'm going to drag this instance data into default instance operator. And for translate x, let's go tx, then let's get ty, and tz. Very nice. Let's grab this. I'm going to do in this comment box, I'm going to make it a little bit translucent just so we can make it a little bit easier to see through. I thought there was a way to do alpha. Oh, there. Back color alpha. There we go. Yes, beautiful. Okay, so I have my basic instances set up. I'm going to go over to this transform right here. And you can see that these boxes are really big. You can see that this hello is made up of these little squares, but they're too big. So let's bring the uniform scale down all the way down. Looking good. That's good for now. I'm going to keep it around 0.03. And let's get this into a position where it's, more directly in front of the camera. So I'm going to go over to this transform, and I'm just going to translate it so it is right in the middle. Beautiful. And, let's just play with this until it kind of fits our viewport in a nice way. Whatever word you use will be kind of on a basis. That looks pretty good to me. Let's add a material to this guy. Beautiful. And now we are ready to start our replicator network. Alright, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to just throw all this into an annotate, and we can just throw that over here. So, in order to get all my images in, what we want to do is create a little replicator network that will bring in all the movie files. So we're going to start out with a DAT. We're going to go to Folder, and I'm going to find my folder. And for me, that is called Images. If you download this project, it should be right there. Now I have this folder full of the names of the files. Cool. So I'm going to put this into a select, as I only need certain parts of this. So I'm going to select rows by index. I'm going to get rid of that first. Row, and then I'm going to select calls by name, and let's get it by name. Excellent. So I'm going to throw this into a null, and I'm going to call this image paths. Excellent. Now let's create a top. Let's get a movie file in. I'm going to go over to this file operator right here. Let's click on this, and we're going to write a little simple expression. So I know that my images are in a folder called images. I'm going to do images plus operator image paths at me.digits at 0. And this will make sense once we have the replicator network a little bit more set up. But let's take a look at this. We're going to add the directory first, and then we're going to look at the row in this image paths based on what digit we are on the operator. Me.digits is a really handy way to kind of keep things organized. So you can see that I'm looking at Alexis Bergamanis, and you can see that is in number 1 of this image paths. Cool. Now let's get a replicator network set up. Replicators are really great. Again, I'm not going to go too much into details of this, but they are really, really powerful. So I'm going to take this replicator. I'm going to throw image paths into the template dat table, and I'm going to bring in this movie file in as the master operator. I'm just going to save because of this step. It can sometimes freeze your TouchDesigner. Don't want to crash. And before I actually do this replication, I just want to make sure that my movie file has a kind of small resolution. 256 by 256 should be okay. I'm just going to bump it up a little bit. Let's do 500 by 500. Or, let's just go to 640 by 480. Let's see what that looks like. So I'm going to go back into this replicator, and I'm going to drag this onto master operator. I'm going to wait a second, and before you know it, we should have a nice little setup of images. Excellent. So this is a little bit dirty. What I can do is, in this layout origin, click on the replicator, and just you can position all these with this little tool right here. So I'm going to bring this down quite a bit so they're out of the way. And now you can see that I have all the images that are within this directory. So I have all these files, and all of these have been replicated out. So now, how do we get these onto the instances? Let's bring in a pattern shop. And I'm going to go to this channel page. I'm going to rename the channel to text index. I'm going to go to pattern. I'm going to change the type to ramp. Then under length, I'm going to hit this expression, and I'm going to write op. And what did I name that sop? I said text sop. So I'm going to do op text sop dot num points. So I'm over here referencing this because I want the correct number of points. Then what I'm going to do is in the from range to range, I'm going to go to under to range 2, and I'm going to do op image paths dot num rows. And let's do num rows -1 since we are 0 indexed. Cool. We are starting to be very close. Now we can go over to our geometry. Let's go onto the second page, and let's go under instance textures. I'm going to find the name of the textures I want to use. In this case, it's item. So I'm going to write item star. And we have our first image in there. That's nice. Then I'm going to drag in this pattern to text index operator. And under texture index, I'm going to hit text index. And wouldn't you know it, we have our images. That's looking pretty good. Let's make this a little bit bigger. I'm going to go back to this transform, and let's increase the size of these rectangles a little bit. Nice. And let's also go back to that original transform, and let's scale up a little bit. Nice. We're looking pretty good. We're getting pretty close. What I want to do is give this a little bit of animation. So I'm going to go over to this pattern, and I am going to go to this phase over here, and I can just move this along. But what I'm going to do is click into the blue and go abs time.seconds times 0.1. And we got a nice little animation going. Hey, we're looking pretty close. And right now, this is basically done. You know, we could call it a day here, and you know, we have the guts of the technique. So everything after this is going to be kind of cool, nice to haves, and some different explorations of ways we can animate this. But you know, in about 15 minutes we have this set up, and I think that's pretty simple for, you know, the coolness of this effect. So first thing I want to do is play with the, let's go over to this resample, and I'm going to just change this a little bit. I want to go segments and bring this up to 50 and bring this down to 0.05. That'll change the amount of subdivisions in it. Then what I want to do is play with the scale of these things. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this pattern, and I am going to grab, I have this over here, I'm going to change this to range to 1, and we have this num points, that's perfect. I am going to change this channel to be scale, And let's put this into a math just in case we need it. And then into a switch in case we need it. And let's put this into a null. And let's throw this into our merge. And go over back to our geo. Go back to the first page of instancing and set scale X to scale. And now we have some really interesting animations happening with the scaling of this. Let's take a look at that. I really love this effect. Let's just give ourselves the option to not have this going on. So an easy way of doing that is to set up a constant. Let's grab that constant. I'm going to rename it to scale. And let's set that to 1. And let's bring that into a transform. Wait, no. That's it. Just going to plug that right back into the switch. And we can see that now nothing is changing because we have our constant. That's pretty good. I want to show you one more way of animating this, though there's a lot more possibilities. I'm actually going to take this this pattern, and I'm going to copy this. And what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to plug this into a phaser. A phaser is a really interesting. It is a really interesting chop. I want to do an entire video just on the phaser because the types of things you can do with it in animating content is really cool. It's made by a developer named David Braun, and yeah, I'm just starting to check out all the possibilities with it, so stay tuned. So I'm going to throw this into a rename, and I'm going to rename this to scale, and I'm going to go over to this pattern. I'm going to change this phase so it's going the other way. So I'm going to change this to be -1. So you can see that in this phaser, instead of just going up and up in this ramp, the phaser is kind of like delaying all of the samples within this. I'm going to bring this num samples up to 50. And we'll play with the edge. And let's bring this into switch. Then we're going to go into the third index. And we are starting to have this animation where we start out with nothing. And we basically slowly bring everything else in. Let me play with this edge so it's a little bit lower. Let's see what happens if it's higher. Excellent. So this is going to be affected by the way that you have your geometry set up. So I think now is the time where I want to show you the last thing about this, and we should be good for today. So I'm going to go back to this switch and go back to this index, 0. And let's check out this sort. This sort's really cool. If I go to point sort and I go to by X, you can see that all the indexes are changing by going left to right. And same with what you would expect with if you go by Y, it's going to go up and down. Then let's go by Z. Well, there's nothing on the Z-axis here, so it's not that interesting. What I really like is random, because then you get this little effect, which is, I think, a very cool kind of like collage-y look. And when I was first developing this technique, I kind of like always defaulted to this, and I think this is a great one. Then I think one of my favorites that I discovered is proximity to point, which lets you kind of have this radial effect. And so you have control over this point, and if I go left or right, it'll change where the effect is basically being scaled to. And remember, this is changing based on these patterns that we have right here, based on scale and based on the texture index. So if I go over here to the texture index and play with that now, if I play with number of cycles and bring this down a little bit, we're going to have it changing a lot less. And that's the best thing. Play around and just keep track of the dials that you are changing, and you're going to find some really cool stuff going on. And that's pretty much it. So, play around with this. There's a lot you can do, and a lot of fun animations that can be had. So, look at that. But again, I think this one is pretty nice. And that's basically what's going on. So if you have any questions, please reach out to me. And good luck. Thank you.